Well, good morning to all, especially you, dear viewer. You personally, we're really, really glad to see you. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to, well, not so much talk to listen to me and Pat talking about the events of the day. Am I right, Pat? Is that a reasonable introduction or not?
Absolutely.
I,
All
al-
two of you.
I always wonder that I'm maybe not giving sufficient credit and acknowledgement to our loyal and growing by the day number of viewers. Well, now, wet oil day there, Pat. I would judge by the darkness of your picture.
As you can see, I'm sitting, even though I'm sitting at a window, it's still very dark. You
Uh,
know, it's a
same,
what?
same up
Jesus.
here. But I mean, it's going to be. What do you expect from a big bit of grunt? Sure, we're going into the weekend where there's going to be
Yeah.
no daylight
No,
at all.
we had friends from Australia. They were from Tasmania,
Yeah.
and they intended to spend the winter here, but they're away back to Australia because or Tasmania,
So
because I think the
they prefer Van Diemen's Land to Ireland.
Aye. I think the sun's shining there. I think it's these days it's about 24, 25 degrees, and
Yeah.
they're heading into summer, so it's long summer days. Look
Oh
at
boy.
us, Jesus!
Oh boy. Oh boy.
It's like we're like Van Diemen's Land here, dark and dank.
Well, we make the best of it, Pat. It's inner
Okay,
sunshine
go
that
first.
counts, not outer sunshine. Okay, let's
Yes,
start with a matter that you raised. It was we should have done this last Monday, actually. And apologies, by the way, all my fault. I lost Monday's video podcast. Sorry, I just tried to convert it, and boom, it went out of existence. I searched and searched and searched. I told you that, didn't I, Pat? I searched and
yes,
searched
yes,
and
yes.
searched and searched, couldn't find it. So I'm going to take
Yeah.
super care with this one. Okay, we're starting with Mary Lou McDonald and Patrick Kielty. And Patrick Kielty's monologue before his Late Late Show a week ago. What were your thoughts? Well, maybe tell people what he actually said and what your own thoughts on it are, Pat.
I think Louise O'Reilly was on the Week in Politics last Sunday,
Yes.
and she came up and there's this. Let's put the context in all this. There's a program called Traitors, and how you want it is you basically backstab, blackmail, whatever you can to win the prize.
Charming.
Basically, you have to be as devious as possible, and it was a big hit in Britain, and I think they're rolling it out here. I'm not quite sure
Oh,
what the
right.
background to all that is, but anyway,
Yeah.
in this monologue, obviously against the background of all the stuff that was going on last week involving Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin, they were never off the air on the news and current affairs last week. And anyway, in his monologue, Kielty said the traitorous Sinn Féin. Now, Jude, there are those. I take it at face value. It was sarcastic. It was a monologue. It was a bit of crack, etc., etc., etc. But I take the point. If I was a member of Sinn Féin, I'd say that would be a typical RT, a jibe at Sinn Féin. But there you go. It depends on your own viewpoint. Now, I know do know a lot of people in Sinn Féin are sort of feeling that, wait a minute, this is just an ongoing onslaught. And it doesn't matter whether it's prime time, the news, whether it's light entertainment like late, it's just non-stop. So I think Louise O'Reilly and various other people on Sinn Féin are sort of hitting out because they're just fed up.
Well, do you think then that you feel that Kilty was justified in using that term traitor when
No,
talking
I
about
don't think he
something?
was. I don't think the word the term is justified, but in the context in which he was saying it, like he said a couple of things. Now, by the way, Jude, the when he actually came out with, there were some of the people in the audience who sort of applauded, and some other one sort of booed. Sort of there was, and even Keelty says, "Oh, that didn't go down well," or something. Like he knew himself, but Jude, he was doing the thing, and maybe the other thing about Keelty is Keelty. A lot of Republicans sort of wonder. Kielty seems so, what would you say, even though his father was shot dead by loyalists, he seems to have gone out of his way in recent years to be sort of very amenable, middle of the road. And I think some people in the nationalist community are thinking, God, wait a minute, he's bending over too far. But maybe that's
Hmm.
unfair and guilty.
Well, let me just briefly say a memory or give you a memory. About 30 years ago or so, I was at a book launch for Ronin Bennett. I don't know if you read him.
I know.
He's West
Yeah.
Belfast. He was an IRA. He served time in jail. He lives in England now, in Hackney, in a very nice part of Hackney. He has written quite a number of top-rate, in my opinion, top-rate novels.
Yeah.
And he's, I think somebody said to me he was actually the arranger of the chess column in the Guardian. So he's quite a sophisticated guy. But he gave a speech at, I think, the launch of the book. And I think Patrick Kielty might have been chairing it or something like that. Because at the end of it, Bennett said, well, Shinny, he'd been talking about the book and so on. And I said, yeah, Shinny. And Patrick Kielty said, we touching the shinner there. No, now have you? And it was a toss-away remark. And again, like the Late Late Show, some people laughed and some people didn't. I thought it was just sort of stupid. I really did. With regard to his remark last week, I'm not at all surprised. Everybody in the media had been talking about or condemning, actually, Sinn Féin. And as a result, most people were thinking in terms of Sinn Féin. That's the power of the media. They tell you what to think about. And most people were talking. So it made sense for Kielty to make some reference to it. To be honest with you, I didn't find it, well, I didn't see it, but when I hear about it, it doesn't really offend me too much. Although I suppose that term was using a death threat to Mary Lou, as Louise O'Reilly says, that'd make a difference. But my objection would be the sort of lame nature of those monologues at the beginning, rather than anything he said in particular against Sinn Féin. I'd object, in other words, on aesthetic grounds rather than political grounds.
Yeah, you see, Jude, years ago, I think what he's trying to do, I could be wrong, but there used to be an American TV host called Dave Letterman, and he used and I get the distinct impression Kielty has tried to rejig the Late Late Show almost on a format the same as Letterman. Letterman used to come out and did a sort of review of the week as a sort of a monologue and whatever. And sometimes, if it was going well, he would actually keep it going longer than he should have. But anyway, Kielty come out, and the monologues are not great. And Jude, there's a well-known BBC personality that maybe you and I both know, sort of turned around to me one day and says, "Geez, I can't stand that man at all now." So I don't. Maybe it's his northern humour. Maybe we'll come on it. Maybe it's the fact that he's a northerner might have something to do with it. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be. That certainly the fact it was a northerner was something that caught the attention of everybody in the south, and I suppose in the north too. To be fair,
Were you watching a video? Were you watching a video last night about northerners?
Yes, and it's one I can recommend to everybody. And I sent you the link to.
Fellas, it should. Let me set this up for you. When I worked in RT many years ago, one day I was sitting on the news desk and the phone rang, and I'm going to use the language that was used to me because it's the context. This guy, before I even got a word, I just said hello, RT news desk, and the guy says, "Is there nothing but fucking news from the north on the news tonight?" And I said, "Sorry, what are you talking about?" He says, "There's 4 or 5 items on the news," and he says, "The troubles in the north have got nothing to do with us," type thing, and so on. 2 seconds later, he says, "Where are you from?" And I says, "I'm Donegal." I said, "Oh, another fucking northerner," and he put down the phone. Now, Jude, I was thinking at the time there was a real antipathy towards Northerners on RT, or sorry, RT viewers. I'm not necessarily an RT. I have to say that. But anyway, what's your view?
Well, I think even back in the 60s when I lived in Dublin, I think people were aware of the fact that I was a northerner. Oh, there was quite a few northern students alongside me. But no, it was never, people were aware of it, but it almost was a curiosity. They sort of imitate your accent. And to some extent, it was an item that got you noticed rather than something that they condemned. Now, I can remember one occasion when it was something to do with me driving a car, I think, and I got into an argument with a guy who said I'd driven the wrong way. And he ended up by shouting at me and shouting, "You and Paisley, you're all the bloody same from up there." So I think there is that element in the southern psyche, which is finding it hard. But what do you expect? The southern government, for decades and decades and decades, taught the people to, for God's sake, see the border is sealed. That's up there. Yeah. We're happily down here. Let's not let the violence spill over, or even the nationalism or republicanism. So it doesn't really surprise me. But I would recommend for anybody who wants to take the time to go into YouTube, and I suppose if you put RIA. Is that, have I got that right?
Royal Irish Academy.
Royal Irish Academy. I was nearly saying IRA. Or Royal Irish
Yeah.
Academy. And put beside it, Northerners not welcome in South. Just say that. And that'll bring you up to a link that'll give you this interview, which went on for, I would say, at least half an hour or more. And it was very, very good, I thought. It was interviewing a woman from Derry who's lived in Dublin for years now, since 1998, I think. And she's a doctor. There's an interview. I mean, the other person on the panel was a guy, I've forgotten his name now, but he's a Green Party senator in the
Yeah.
Shannon in Dublin. And he's from the north. He's from North Belfast. And the third person was she's what do you call it? What do you call that when you are a top dog in a law firm? Not a
It's a partner, senior
partner.
fellow.
Yes, she is
Yeah.
a partner. She is a partner in an international law firm, and she's from Carrickfergus and from a Protestant and Unionist background. The interesting thing about her, incidentally, was, and she said this, that when she was picked for this, she suspects that people expected her to produce a view of the Northern Protestant Unionist outlook. But the fact of what it was, she came down, she married, I think, a Kerry man. She fell in love with Irish language, felt it was part of her heritage, learnt it and became reasonably fluent in it. But she says she's got 4 children, all of whom are sent through Irish medium schools, and they put her to shame the way they can talk, but she's delighted with it. So
Yeah.
she's a nationalist, although she's from a very sort of loyalist part of the north.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's really interesting to hear
Yeah.
the way they talk about how people respond to their northern accents. One of them even says, I changed my accent. Somebody gave me a tip and said, listen, you better change your accent because it's distracting people from what you're saying. That
Yeah.
northern voice, people think about all sorts of other things. You'd be better to get a voice or an accent that would fit in. And I'll not say what happened then, but that was what part of the advice you got. But anyway, I think it's a terrific video. It was on for about half an hour or more and well worth looking at. If you're interested in the idea of Northerners living in the South or an integration, as were, of South and North. Okay, that's the end of my little lesson in that, Pat. I hope you'll
Okay,
love
very
it.
good. Yeah.
Okay, now let's go to Sinn Féin. We're entering the election. I have to call the date of the election they have, haven't they?
No, but Jude, it's almost certain now. It's going to be the end of November. I think November 29th.
29th, isn't it?
Our friend Simon Harris said he likes elections on a Friday. There's a constitutional imperative, I think, about 4 weeks or something, and they don't want to drag it into the early weeks of Christmas. So I presume it's November 29th.
I remember hearing an argument, now I think it was up here for an election, and somebody arguing that it'd be better to have them on a Thursday because a lot of students who be keen to vote on a Friday, they're on their way home traveling. And that very often means that they just don't bother with the voting. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but anyway, probably Friday the 29th. Sinn Féin is on the back foot, not part of an article in today's Irish Times, but the item goes on to say that does not mean the government parties are over the line. What do you think, Pat?
I agree with that totally. I really genuinely do. Um, on our podcast on Monday, which unfortunately we didn't broadcast, we discussed this. But anyway, I think there's a slight turn. I think people are fed up. Jude, right, here's 2 or 3 things. It seems to be that internal Sinn Féin procedures, and that's what we're talking about here. Now, they're not totally minor, but they're not major. Absolutely not major. Jude, basically, Sinn Féin did all the right things, but not necessarily in the right order. And there was a couple of own goals. But Jude, they sacked the people concerned. They did the right thing. The only thing is, for instance, let's stick to one case, Michael McMonigal. They actually sacked him, and they sacked the 2 people that were involved. But there's all this sort of thing about child
Child protection, yeah.
protection,
But
because Michael McMonigal,
whose children are being protected? and
No,
why.
but you see, the first Michael McMonigal is now convicted of, I know, attempting to have commit some sort of sexual acts with children. So
Hmm.
there's where, and he was employed, but they'd already sacked him. So are Sinn Féin responsible for that? Then Niall O'Donoghue, apparently, and I am not certain about this, but I read it in the Irish News, I think, that he has been getting he's been getting some sort of medical help since 2020. That he resigned. He was sacked by Sinn Féin. He resigned, etc., etc., etc. The only thing is they didn't tell the Dáil why they had sacked him, or and so on. Jude, as far as I'm concerned, big deal. They dealt with it. And I think a lot of people are starting to see the same. Jude, there was a Vox Pop on RT one day, and 3 or 4 people are interviewing. On the scale of things, this is not affecting my life one iota. Jude, at the end of the day, housing, hospital appointments, cost of living, all those things. If you're a family of 4 in this country right now in the Republic, I'm talking about, it's a big, big issue about everything's gone sky high. The cost of everything is sky high. And I don't think anybody, no wee Mrs. Doherty stood up. I don't think she's too concerned about Sinn Féin's internal procedures
Hmm.
as regards to hiring and firing.
Well, would you say that it's surprising that she isn't concerned about Sinn Féin's procedures, given the amount of pile-on there was from the media? I thought the media pulled out all the stops to really get after Sinn Féin. It was just one thing after another. I counted in, for example, the Irish Times today on the opinion section. There must have been at least 3 or 4 of the columns there that were to do with Sinn
Yeah.
Féin, and none of them were complimentary.
As our friend Ray Bassett, let's get for those who don't know, we sometimes refer to him. Ray was the sort of the chief Irish civil servant at Merryfield and Belfast during the run up to the signing of Good Friday Agreement. He was subsequently Irish ambassador to Canada and various other places. He's a very middle of the road man. And Ray wrote an article which was published in one of the major websites a couple of weeks back, where he said this pylon in Sinn Féin was ridiculous. He says minor incidents were being, almost been blown up to the extent that they were all considered almost an existentialist threat to the state. He says, and he actually sort of said, "This is ridiculous." That okay. I think he said Sinn Féin were cack-handed. I think that was the term he used. But he says that's as far as it goes, and I agree totally with that.
Yeah. Well, I suppose you can't blame their opponents. I mean, if you're in a political party and you see the opposition doing something that, even in a minor way, might be seen as a fault, you're going to jump on it and say this is a major catastrophe. And certainly they have. And I wouldn't blame for a moment the political parties. What I would blame for a moment, and for more than a moment, would be the media, because the media
Yeah,
are, let's face the facts, in terms of politics. The media are the people who construct our vision of politics.
yeah,
By and large, I mean, most of us don't meet with political party leaders. Most of us don't meet with, on a regular basis, senators or
yeah,
TDs or MLAs or that kind of thing. But we see them in the media, and how they're presented
yeah.
by the media, and to a great extent, can shape our thinking. And I would say that the media made a concerted effort to present Sinn Féin as a painted devil over the last 2 or 3 weeks, and to some extent, I think that has leaked through to the general population. Would you think
Yeah,
so, Pat, or do you think they're more common sense?
there's no doubt about that. There's been a massive pile-on in Sinn Féin. There's no one can deny that. Maybe some of it was brought on by themselves, but you see, the thing about it is there's everybody's going down this road. All their procedures. What happens if they got into government and all that sort of stuff. But here's the other thing that I think most people, most politicians live in this wee political bubble, and you think Mrs. Doherty or Mrs. McLaughlin or whoever it is, or are sitting there absolutely engrossed in this and all. I don't think so. I genuinely don't. I think a lot of people in that political bubble around Dublin and so on think that everybody's engaged the same. No, they're not, Jude. I really
Well,
genuinely, I haven't, Jude. I haven't heard anybody that I met on my travels say, "Oh, isn't that terrible?"
hmm, hmm.
It's not. It's not impacting. Jude, see if you can't get a house, or you can't get an appointment, or when you go out and you buy a drum of gas that was sort of 25 quid this time last year, and is now 32 or 33. That's what people are concerned about.
So, on a scale of, finally, before we leave this, Pat, on a scale of 1 to 10, What do you think of the performance of the media in terms of reporting these events?
At 4.
4. Okay. You're very generous. Okay. Loyalist paramilitaries. You've got, you're citing an article you've read on this, which
Yeah.
is talking about their moving to becoming, peaceful or dissolving or whatever. Do you want to say a few words on it? Because I've got some stuff too.
Jude, no, it's just a generalized thing, Jude. If you remember when the ceasefires were called, Gusty Spence went up in front of the cameras and said, "We were true and abject remorse for all the things that went on during the Troubles,
Mm,
and we're now moving forward." Jude, the Good Friday Agreement was signed in what, 1998?
correct.
Uh, that's 26 years ago. Since then, it seems that the loyalist paramilitaries are being bought off with big money. They're all running around the upper echelons in big cars, nice houses, going on foreign holidays. So here we are, 26 years later. They are still transitioning, from violence to peace. Now, Jude, can you imagine if there were the Shinners, Sinn Féin, of course, a political party, but can you imagine if old Republicans were sitting running around, getting massive grants and so on, and still, Jude, there's supposed to be 12,500 UDA men or loyalist paramilitaries active or whatever. Can you imagine there's 12,500, what do you call it, Republicans meeting every so often? Remember, there was somebody died in Belfast, and there was a show of strength. There was these guys, I think, one Saturday morning with their white shirts, their black ties, and black trousers, lined the streets for about a mile. Now, Jude, can you imagine the absolute outrage if a Sinn Féin had done that?
Well, some people would say they have done it, like the Bobby Story thing.
Yeah, hey Jude, that was old comrades, and it was do you remember? No, the loyalist thing was Jesus, Jude. That it was only a couple of weeks ago, and it was what, 12,500. You
Mm,
know, I don't think we're
Well,
comparing like with like.
yeah, yeah. Well, the thing I would ask, I was listening to William Crawley yesterday, and he was talking to the Reverend Harold Good. You remember him? He was one of the
Yes,
three
involved
people
in
who inspected the decommissioning
yeah,
by Sinn
yeah,
Féin. He's got a book out by IRA. He's got a book out, and he was talking to Crawley. I suppose he wanted a bit of publicity for it, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't give Crawley the details, what was it like and what did you see and so on. He says he's not going to go into that, but he's happy to go into the implications of it, etc. Now,
yeah.
the one thing that was not raised was loyalist decommissioning. And I had, to be honest with you, it shows you how muddled you get. I had to do a Google to figure out maybe loyalism did decommission and I missed it. But as
Hmm.
far as I can tell, they never decommissioned. I forgot that right, Pat.
As far as I know, Jude, there was never, as far as I know, any inspection of loyalists' weapons.
So what the hell is going on here? We had two armed, well, more than two armed groups, but if you like, there's a counterpart with the UDA, etc., on the loyalist side, and IRA on the other side. So the
Yeah,
IRA decommissions its weapons. It's inspected by a Protestant minister, general from Canada, I think it was, and somebody else,
yeah,
and they are destroyed. We're given that total assurance that they were destroyed. But
yeah.
nobody even asks for the UDA and company to decommission theirs. What sort of a crazy world are we living in? I mean,
I
why
don't know.
did
Open the
Crawley
correction.
not
You see,
ask Harold Good?
uh,
Were you ever asked to go for to witness decommissioning by the loyalists?
Something planted the seed of doubt in my head. I don't ever remember reading about loyalist decommissioning. I have to admit. Yeah, I
It's
just
sort of
presumed they had.
I sort of assume it's so obvious. If they're
Yeah.
decommissioned, surely they have. I don't think they did. I tell you, I
Mm.
have one memory where there's a guy, Jesus, almost comic. There's a guy who takes a couple of old sort of muskets and he takes an axle grinder to it and he
Uh,
cuts the barrels off them. And there's about two or three of these weapons,
uh,
old weapons. And that was it.
yeah. Well, you know,
I mean,
you've got to be honest. I am now not. I never even thought of that, to tell you the truth.
well, ask around between now and next
Uh,
Monday, Pat, and I'll do the same and see if we can come up
yeah,
with anybody who can tell us when and if the loyalist paramilitary is decommissioned. Um,
yeah.
Meanwhile, it hasn't stopped the likes of Paul Given and others from talking to the LCC. Is that
Yeah.
is that a reasonable thing, given the fact that they are there? Is it a good idea to talk to them?
Yeah. No, the LCC, after you put this on the record, is legal, but it's the greatest sleight of hand. The UVF and all those guys in the UFF are not legal, but the LCC represents the views of an illegal organisation, though they're not illegal itself. Now, Jude, that is sophistry of the highest order. And I've got to admit, say, back again, if the views of the IRA were being given to, say, Conor Murphy publicly, and can you imagine the outrage? Oh, Sinn Féin are listening to the views of the IRA on these illegal organisations, but yet the LCC can go along to Paul Given and say, "Hey, we don't want an Irish language school in this part of Belfast," and that is unacceptable. It really is unacceptable.
Well, there's another way. You see, whenever Sinn Féin were being boycotted, a lot of us were saying they have a right to have their views heard. And maybe
Yeah.
we should be saying the same thing about the UDA and these other people. They have a
No,
right to
no,
have.
Jude. Sinn Féin stood for election, and they got themselves elected. The Loyalist paramilitaries stood for election and didn't get elected. And so, in other words, the DUP, UVUP, TUV, and all speak for the Loyalist people. I don't see the people. Jude, I don't know why people like Jamie Bryson, who got, what was it, 216 votes or something, as a spokesman for loyalism or unionism. I don't understand. Aren't there so many other loyal unionists out there who got elected? Why are we listening to the likes of Jamie Bryson?
Well, they suppose they see the loyalists as
Yeah, but
being.
the point I'm making, it is a serious point. This guy, what is this thing that the LCC are regularly on with William Crawley? They're
Hmm.
regularly on other shows. They're talked about in the media. You know, why are they allowed to exist in some sort of don't say a vacuum, but surely if they don't stand for election and don't get election, why have they got this sort of standing or status?
Well, to tell you the truth, I asked you about out of 10 there a minute ago on another topic. But I would say, in terms of them talking the likes of to William Crawley, the likes of what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. The little chap. Uh, uh, the likes of them talking to the media, I don't have a problem with that. But I'd say I'd put that at about 2, but I'd put it at about 10, where in fact these paramilitary groups still exist. And nobody says a damn word. And they haven't decommissioned, and nobody says a damn word to the point where we can't even remember. It's
Yeah.
like
Jude,
Animal
let's
Farm. You can't remember whether
yeah,
it was 2 legs are good or
yeah, but
four
here's the
legs.
thing, Jude. The UDA, it's known, at least certain sections, are up to their eyeballs in drug dealing,
Hmm.
money lending, intimidation in their own communities. And it's all sort of brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I think. Well, I suspect that the likes of Sinn Féin and the SDLP aren't hard on them for this for different
Mm.
reasons. Sinn Féin wants to present itself as a reasonable party, and I suppose it's thinking about a southern electorate and how they would view them in the north. So if they show
Yeah,
themselves to be very tolerant and inclusive and so on, rather than facing up to the things that the loyalists have
yeah,
done or are doing,
yeah, yeah,
that is better to avoid that friction.
yeah.
So I guess that's probably a reason. I'm trying to make a case for the impossible, but there you go. Okay,
Uh,
let's briefly, Pat, because we're running out of time. Let's briefly talk about an incident that is reported, uh, although it happened 40 years ago. A young County Derry guy called Francis Bradley, who was 20 years of age at the time. He was an IRA man, and he was at an arms dump near Bridge in
mm,
1986. And he was
mm.
checking out, I suppose, to see that the two guns were there. And he was ambushed by, I don't know who it was,
On
Frew
the
or
SAS.
whatever. And
Mm.
they shot him 8 times. As far as I remember, the last 2 or 3 shots were put into him, and he was dead at that point anyway. Now, what do you think of that? They brought a case, his family said that was shoot to kill and so on. He could have been arrested, and the judge turned them down the other day and so no, it was as reasonable force.
Jude, well, I think it was a coroner rather than a judge,
Oh,
if I
yes,
remember
right.
correctly.
Okay, great.
But anyway, just
This
Jude,
is well, I need to get me straight, Pat.
no, but as far as
You're
I
all
remember, it
right.
was a
You're all right.
coroner.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and just so somebody doesn't come back and say, "Well, no, it wasn't a court. That was a court." Anyway, Jude, do you remember the Gibraltar,
Yeah.
the killings in Gibraltar?
Yep.
Like the whole British government said that was totally legal and there was force and so on and so on. Jude, I am not. I find it amazing that if you put apparently they fired 20 shots at him, eight of which killed him. And at the time, I'm not 100% certain, was he even armed?
I don't think he
I
was. I
think he
don't
might
think
have
he
been.
was. He was examining these
No,
guns. I don't think he had them in his hand.
no, but Jude, to put eight bullets into somebody and say that's reasonable force. But Jude, no, someone got the states. When you look at what's happening, what the Israelis are doing, the establishment always sort of. This guy was an IRA man. He was an IRA's dump. Our boys in the uniform were, doing the right thing, and they're always going to, Jude, what can I say? Probably legally, the coroner's court is going to turn around and say that this is our findings, and hard, you might disagree with it, but that's the reality.
Well, here's a thought, and maybe I shouldn't voice it, but I will. If it was a war, as many people in the Republican community would describe it during the years of the conflict, if it was a war, I mean, that's exactly the kind of thing that happens in war. They don't check has the enemy got a gun. They blow them out of
Fire
existence if they
first,
get the
yeah,
chance. And the other way around too. Sinn Féin, oh God, I keep saying that. The IRA, when they planted a bomb in a car or wherever, didn't, check was there some other way of hurting this guy without killing him.
yeah,
They
yeah,
killed him. So
yeah.
is that not just the way it is? Should they not just
It's,
accept that,
you know
horrible though it is?
remember that Hollywood version of America during the Second World War?
Yeah.
American soldiers were the good guys.
Hmm.
Somebody said to me one time years ago, "Do you ever notice the Americans never took prisoners?" So maybe you should ask the question. To use your own analogy, seeing war, I think they probably just took them out and the end of the story. But the law is all on the side of the victors, isn't it?
It is. It is. It is. Ah, dear. Well, his family, obviously, and I suppose his Republican comrades would see him as a hero, and they're entitled to do that. But I'm sure they would get flack if the unionists got after them on that one. They would say, "Oh, he's a terrorist," etc. Anyway, okay. Well, yeah, we'll end with this little sort of silly bit, Pat. I know it's not sensible, but I will anyway. There's an awful lot of brouhaha about this portrait of DUP ex-mayor of Belfast, Wallace Brown, which apparently they said I got two reports. One said it was damaged, and another said no, it wasn't damaged. The glass was broken in the frame. But it's
Yeah.
been held up as another example of Sinn Féin really, doing wrong stuff. Would you
Yeah.
classify it as that, or?
You have to fill me in on that.
Well, that's what happened. They said that there was some sort of event happening in Stormont, and they were in the room where oh no, maybe it was Belfast City Hall, where the room where various Lord Mayors' portraits were painted and hung around. One of them was
Uh,
of a Lord Mayor called Wallace Brown, and in the course of the evening of this Sinn Féin event, one of the Sinn Féin people got excited to the point where they either broke the glass or else damaged the features of Wallace Brown. And it's been seen as another example of the wildness and I don't know what you would call it, uncivilized
yeah,
behavior of Sinn Féin.
yeah. Sorry, Jude, I'm not up to speed on it. So, but on that note, I have got to go because I have just had visitors. So I'll see you later.
I've never heard of a man backing out of a question more successfully. Thank you, Pat.
All the best, Jude.
All the best. All the best.
See you later.